The Let Russ Cook movement is going to be back in full swing in 2021. So how far can the Seahawks go? Answering that question and more right after the intro.
Perfect.
Before we get too far into things, subscribe to support the channel and of course get the bell on to know every single time I'm dropping a video. And with that out of the way, it's on to the content. So the Seattle Seahawks had a pretty wild offseason to say the least for all of the wrong reasons. The Russell Wilson trade speculation dominated the news cycle for, well, weeks on end until it was finally put to rest when Russell Wilson himself basically said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not getting traded. The Chicago Bears even sent a trade. The Seattle Seahawks even declined the trade. Very lucrative, probably a ton of picks involved, but the Seattle Seahawks are staying committed to Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson seems pretty excited to be back into the locker room, back into the Seattle Seahawks environment to get the 2021 season started. All things considered, the Seattle Seahawks made some pretty big offseason moves after Russell Wilson's very vocal discomfort and very vocal frustrations were put on display during this offseason. So the Seattle Seahawks made a ton of moves. So the question really is, are they prepared after all of these moves to get back into the playoff picture? Well, let's examine some of these pickups, free agency and the draft. Who'd they get? Well, the biggest catch they made was Gabe Jackson, the guard formerly of the Las Vegas Raiders, is going to help shore up an offensive line that, well, for the past decade has ranked in the bottom 10 of all NFL offensive lines. The offensive line around Russell Wilson has been disgusting for pretty much 9 out of the past 10 years. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. He was getting sacked at a rate that was absolutely astronomical. It was just too much. Russell Wilson running for his life on a lot of plays, and thank goodness for his athletic ability to even break out, or else he'd probably get sacked even more. Look, Gabe Jackson is a huge addition because the offensive line for the Seahawks is, again, just absolutely dreadful. So improving the offensive line, going a long way to make Russell Wilson happy. Is going to help open up this offense. Gabe Jackson's probably the biggest move the Seattle Seahawks made. And even with a $9.5 million price tag over the next couple seasons, going to be well worth it as far as keeping Russell Wilson happy. Another big pickup, tight end Gerald Everett. Russell Wilson really enjoys those tight ends as well. Pete Carroll went out and got an in-division foe, a pretty common trend over this past offseason as far as free agency is concerned. Gerald Everett's going to help open up the offense. Another vertical tight end threat is going to help improve, along with the number of other great passing options in this offense. And then the NFL draft came and went. The Seattle Seahawks were relatively quiet, not making their first pick until round 2, getting Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan. Another toy for Russell Wilson to throw to. Man, the Seattle Seahawks decided we're going to try to make him happy, otherwise, because we don't want him to leave. And to round out the offensive additions, Shane Waldron, formerly of the Los Angeles Rams, is stepping in to be the new offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm sure the hope is going to be they're going to open up the offense even more for Russell Wilson to avoid a second half slump like they saw last season. So Seattle, very hopeful on the offensive side of things. Shane Waldron stepping into a big role. A lot of eyes are going to be on him and his performance this year. And honestly, the Seattle Seahawks are probably very excited to see what he's going to bring to the table. Defensively, Ahkello Witherspoon and Kerry Hyder coming over from in-division rival San Francisco, going to add to the pass rush as well as pass breakups. Ahkello Witherspoon, one of the more underrated corners coming out of the NFC West, going to be a solid addition to help replace the loss of Shaquille Griffin. And looking at the Seahawks situation, this offseason, they didn't really have a lot of room to play around with, but making the moves that they made nonetheless has made this offense more complete, more well-rounded, is going to provide even further for Russell Wilson's abilities, keep him in the pocket, keep him a little bit cleaner, and I'm excited to see what this offense does. Of course, you've already got some amazing weapons in Chris Carson, who they just re-signed this offseason, Tyler Lockett, and how could you forget the monster that is D DK Metcalf. And then defensively, the Seattle Seahawks have a great number of weapons. The big three being, of course, linebacker Bobby Wagner, one of the more versatile defensive backs in Jamal Adams, an all-world safety in the NFL. And then, of course, the re-signing of defensive lineman Carlos Dunlap adds some good pass rush to a defense that, well, thrives on pressuring quarterbacks. So with all those additions out of the way, let's get on to it. Let's predict the Seattle Seahawks 2021 season. CBS Sports has the Seahawks schedule ranked 11th in the NFL at a .511% clip, meaning their opponents are going to be a little bit more on the tougher end, but this Seattle Seahawks team is strong enough and well coached enough that they're going to be able to handle all these opponents and even more. Weeks 1 through 5 is a pretty tough start for any team in the NFL. Week 1 seeing the Indianapolis Colts, Week 2, Tennessee Titans, Minnesota after that, the San Francisco 49ers, and then the Los Angeles Rams. I would not be surprised here if the Seahawks can start off hot and go 4-1, with their first loss being on Thursday night to the Los Angeles Rams and Matthew Stafford. That offense for the Rams is going to be dynamic and really interesting to watch all season. Matthew Stafford's going to get a lot more playing time and a lot more TV time than we're used to seeing him, one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Sean McVay is going to have a lot to play around with Stafford in that offense. And I think 4-1 is a great start for the Seattle Seahawks with wins over the Colts, the Titans, and of course the Minnesota Vikings and the San Francisco 49ers, who themselves are just trying to get back into a flow after being injured all of the last season. Week 6 through 10 is going to be a nice, interesting stretch as well. They got the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New Orleans Saints, the Jacksonville Jaguars, a bye in Week 9, and the Green Bay Packers. Look, hear me out here. I think the Seattle Seahawks could reasonably go 4-0 during this stretch with just the schedule panning out very nicely. Pittsburgh's going to be a nice opponent during this stretch, of course, but New Orleans being hurt a lot this past offseason with a horrible cap situation. Jacksonville just very young and very unproven here. Trevor Lawrence is going to be rattled against guys like Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams. And then that bye week is setting them up very nicely. Aaron Rodgers or not, the Green Bay Packers are going to be coming into a game against a Seattle Seahawks team that has had 2 weeks to prepare for them. So I'm not going to be surprised if the Seahawks, worst case scenario, go 3-1 here. But I'm going to be pretty optimistic and say they go 4-0 and clean up here. So 8-1 going into weeks 11 through 15. They start off this little stretch with the Arizona Cardinals, the Washington Football Team, San Francisco 49ers, Houston Texans, and the Los Angeles Rams. I wouldn't be shocked here if the Seattle Seahawks go 3-2. A little bit of a bumpy stretch here with losses to the San Francisco 49ers and the Washington Football Team. Washington in that front seven are going to be a nightmare. And even with an improved Seattle Seahawks offensive line, Chase Young and company are just going to be absolutely too much for, well, many offenses in the NFL to handle. Don't be shocked if they sneak a win by them here. I think San Francisco is another team they're just going to split that series in the division with, much like, well, the Los Angeles Rams, which I think they're going to get a win there. So 3-2 during that stretch is going to bring them up to a win total of 11-3. And then finally, week 16 through 18, see them taking on the Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, and Arizona Cardinals. Don't be shocked if Seattle takes off week 18 in the interest of staying healthy during the playoffs. 2-1 does not seem unreasonable here, with the Cardinals taking that one victory away from them. And the Seattle Seahawks are going to be competing with a number of really good teams for that number 1 overall spot in the playoffs for that single team bye week. But Seattle may or may not get it. I wouldn't be shocked if they just take off week 18 after securing the division, the NFC West, and just saying, hey, we're going to take an impromptu bye week here, play the second string guys, and we'll see you guys in the playoffs. And the postseason in the NFC is going to be absolutely bonkers. If teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can stay healthy, I don't know who's necessarily going to topple them, but do not be surprised if the Seattle Seahawks are a team you see in the NFC Championship game. They're an absolutely strong offensive squad. If this offense can stay on fire throughout the season and catch fire even further in the playoffs, don't be shocked if there's a lot of shootouts that Russell Wilson is just going to, well, outmatch people in. Russell Wilson's an absolute stud. He's an MVP candidate potentially this year. Don't be shocked if his name is once again one of those guys we're considering on the ballot. Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks offense are going to be in store for a great 2021 NFL regular season. I mean, heck, 13 wins to 4 losses during the regular season is none too shabby at all. Still an improvement. I think they're going to make the playoffs, no doubt about it, as long as health is on their side. You always got to throw that in there because the NFL season is absolutely unpredictable. Injuries are going to happen to every single squad. Teams got to roll the punches regardless. If Seattle Seahawks, though, can get fortunate on the health side of things, 13-4 does not seem like a bad clip to hit, and the NFC Championship seems like a bare minimum for this team. I don't know if they're going to make the Super Bowl, mind you, but they're a contender in my opinion. This Seattle Seahawks team is going to be scary and should not be underestimated. So thank you so much for watching the video. Feel free to check me out down in my social medias, all in the description below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and of course get the bell on to know every single time I'm dropping a video. My name is Tristan Blake Rines, and I'm going to catch you in the next one. Adios.